Before we begin, let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you promised yourself that tomorrow would be different, and then tomorrow looked exactly the same? How many goals have you delayed, not because you couldn't do them, but because you didn't feel like doing them? This is not a motivation problem. This is not a talent problem. This is something far more dangerous because it feels harmless while it slowly steals your future. Laziness doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up as failure. It shows up as comfort, delay, and I'll do it later. And if you don't confront it, it doesn't just waste your time. It quietly decides the direction of your life. The truth is, your potential is not missing. It's waiting for you to stop negotiating with the habits that are holding you back. In the next few minutes, you're going to hear things that may make you uncomfortable, but that discomfort is a signal, not a threat. It's the sound of excuses breaking. This is not about working harder for the sake of suffering. It's about reclaiming control, rebuilding self-respect, and cutting off the patterns that are sabotaging you every single day. If you stay until the end, you won't just understand why laziness keeps showing up in your life. You'll know exactly how to eliminate it at the root. Not with hype, not with temporary motivation, but with decisions and systems that permanently change how you show up. So don't treat this like another video. Treat it like a turning point, because the cost of staying the same is higher than the discomfort of change, and the version of you who finally takes control is closer than you think. Laziness is often misunderstood as a lack of ability, talent, or intelligence, but in reality, it is almost always a reflection of low personal standards. When someone says they are lazy, what they are really saying is that they have accepted a level of effort that is far below what they are capable of. Human beings naturally move toward the minimum requirement unless a higher standard is clearly defined and enforced. If there is no internal rule about how you show up, how hard you try, or how much effort is non-negotiable, the mind will always choose the easier path. This is not weakness, it is human nature. Standards are the invisible rules you live by. They decide whether you get up when the alarm rings or hit snooze. They decide whether you finish the task when it gets uncomfortable or postpone it until tomorrow. Two people with the same skills and opportunities can end up with completely different lives simply because one refuses to tolerate excuses while the other negotiates with them. The moment you allow yourself to say, I'll do it later without consequence, you lower your standard. Over time, this becomes your default behavior, and it starts to feel like laziness, even though it is just repeated self-compromise. High performers are not more motivated than everyone else. They simply have higher non-negotiables. They don't ask themselves how they feel. They ask themselves what is required. When the standard is clear, action becomes automatic. When the standard is vague, excuses multiply. This is why waiting for motivation never works. Motivation is emotional and temporary, but standards are logical and permanent. If your standard is to train every day, you don't debate it. If your standard is to deliver quality work no matter what, you don't look for shortcuts. Laziness disappears when the cost of not acting becomes unacceptable. When you raise your standards, you change the consequences. Missing a workout is no longer no big deal. It becomes a violation of who you are. Skipping work is no longer justified by tiredness. It becomes self-betrayal. The brain adapts quickly to whatever you consistently enforce. Raise the bar and your behavior rises to meet it. Lower the bar and your potential slowly suffocates under comfort, delay, and excuses that once felt harmless but now quietly control your daily choices. Comfort feels harmless because it disguises itself as rest, safety, and balance, but over time, it becomes the silent killer of potential. Human beings are wired to seek comfort and avoid discomfort, yet every meaningful improvement in life exists on the other side of that instinct. When comfort becomes the priority, growth becomes optional, and when growth is optional, stagnation becomes the norm. This is how people slowly drift away from their capabilities without ever making a conscious decision to fail. Comfort does not demand your attention the way chaos or hardship does. It settles in quietly. It convinces you that you deserve a break before you've earned progress, that tomorrow is a better time to push, that staying where you are is safer than risking effort. The danger is not in comfort itself, but in living there permanently. Short-term comfort trades long-term fulfillment for temporary ease. And most people don't realize the trade until years have passed and the gap between who they are and who they could have been feels painfully wide. Potential only reveals itself under pressure. Skills sharpen when challenged, confidence grows when tested, and character is formed when things are difficult. Comfort removes that pressure. When life becomes too convenient, the urgency to improve disappears. You stop asking more of yourself because nothing is forcing you to. The mind begins to settle for familiarity instead of progress, and slowly, ambition is replaced with routine. This is not a dramatic collapse. It is on bad days, the system carries you. On good days, it keeps you from overdoing it and burning out. Another advantage of systems is that they reduce mental fatigue. Decision-making drains energy, and when every task requires willpower, laziness eventually wins. A well-designed system eliminates unnecessary choices. You know exactly what needs to be done, in what order, and for how long. This clarity creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. The more consistently you show up, the more you begin to trust yourself, and self-trust is far more powerful than temporary motivation. Systems also create measurable progress. Motivation feels good, but it is not trackable. Systems produce data, routines, and patterns you can improve. When something isn't working, you adjust the system instead of blaming yourself. This shifts your identity from someone who struggles with discipline to someone who builds structures that support success. When motivation fades, the system remains, quietly doing the work for you day after day, turning effort into identity and intention into results through consistency that no emotional high could ever sustain. Most people believe laziness is a personal flaw, something that must be fixed with more willpower or stronger motivation, but behavior is largely shaped by environment, not inner strength. The spaces you live and work in, the people you interact with, and the cues you are constantly exposed to quietly dictate your actions. When your environment is designed for comfort, distraction, and ease, it becomes almost impossible to stay disciplined no matter how strong your intentions are. The brain responds automatically to what is placed in front of it, choosing the path of least resistance every time. If your phone is always within reach, notifications constantly pulling your attention, focus becomes a daily battle. If your workspace is cluttered or associated with entertainment, your mind struggles to switch into productive mode. If the people around you normalize procrastination and excuses, those behaviors start to feel acceptable. This is not a failure of character, it is the predictable result of environmental cues reinforcing certain habits. The environment trains you, even when you are not aware of it. Willpower is limited and easily depleted. Expecting it to override a poorly designed environment is unrealistic. This is why disciplined people often appear effortless in their routines. They are not constantly resisting temptation, they have removed it. They design their surroundings so that the right behavior is the easiest behavior. When distractions are hidden, effort decreases. When tools are visible, action increases. Small changes in environment can produce massive shifts in behavior without requiring more motivation. Environment also includes the standards and expectations set by those you spend time with. Human beings adapt to what feels normal. If your circle values growth, discipline, and progress, you naturally rise to meet those expectations. If your environment rewards comfort and avoidance, your potential slowly shrinks to fit that space. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to be intentional about whose influence you allow to shape your daily decisions. When you change your environment, you change your default behavior. Instead of relying on discipline to fight bad habits, you eliminate the triggers that create them. Instead of forcing productivity, you make it the natural response to your surroundings. Success becomes less about pushing harder and more about designing smarter, where your environment quietly guides you toward action, focus, and consistency without constant internal struggle or exhaustion. Most people believe they need to feel energetic, confident, or inspired before they take action, but this belief keeps them trapped in inaction. Energy is not the starting point, it is the result. The human body and mind respond to movement, not intention. When you stay still, overthink, and wait for the perfect feeling, your energy drops even further. Action, even small and imperfect action, sends a signal to your brain that progress is happening, and that signal immediately begins to generate momentum. When you take the first step, your physiology changes. Your heart rate increases, your focus sharpens, and your mind shifts from avoidance to engagement. This is why starting is always the hardest part and continuing becomes easier once you are in motion. The brain resists uncertainty and effort, but once action begins, it quickly adapts and supports continuation. This is not motivation magically appearing, it is biology responding to movement. Small actions are especially powerful because they lower resistance. You don't need to complete the entire task to create energy, you just need to begin. Opening the document, putting on workout shoes, standing up from the chair, these actions seem insignificant, but they interrupt the cycle of laziness. Once interrupted, the cycle loses its grip. Energy builds step by step, and what felt overwhelming minutes ago becomes manageable through motion. Action also creates clarity. When you are inactive, problems feel larger and more complicated than they are. When you act, information reveals itself. You see what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. This clarity reduces mental friction and increases confidence. Confidence is not a personality trait, it is the memory of past actions taken. The more you act, the more evidence you collect that you are capable, and that evidence fuels future energy. Waiting for energy is passive. Acting is proactive. The people who move forward consistently are not those who feel ready, but those who act despite uncertainty. They understand that discomfort at the start is temporary, but the momentum created by action compounds. Once action becomes your response to resistance, laziness loses its power because you no longer wait for permission from your feelings. You move first and energy follows, turning effort into rhythm and hesitation into forward motion that sustains itself through consistent engagement with the work in front of you. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, punishment, or a loss of freedom, but in reality, it is the highest form of self-respect and long-term protection. Every undisciplined decision feels harmless in the moment because it offers immediate relief, comfort, or pleasure, but those moments quietly accumulate into regret. Discipline works in the opposite direction, demands effort now so that suffering does not have to be paid later. The pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lingers and grows with time. Every choice you make today is a message sent to your future self. When you avoid the work, skip the practice, or delay the responsibility, you are not avoiding effort, you are transferring it. Future, you will pay the price with stress, limitation, and missed opportunities. Discipline prevents this debt from forming. It is the act of handling what needs to be handled while the cost is still small. What feels difficult now would feel impossible later if ignored long enough. Discipline creates trust within yourself. Each time you do what you said you would do, even when it's uncomfortable, you strengthen your self-belief. This internal trust becomes the foundation of confidence. On the other hand, every broken promise weakens that foundation. Over time, a lack of discipline leads to self-doubt, hesitation, and fear of commitment. Not because the person lacks ability, but because they have learned through experience that they cannot rely on themselves. Regret is rarely about what someone tried and failed at. It is almost always about what they never attempted. Discipline reduces regret by ensuring that effort is given consistently, not just when conditions are ideal. It transforms dreams into processes and intentions into habits. When discipline is present, progress becomes inevitable because actions align with values instead of emotions. Choosing discipline is choosing your future over your comfort. It means deciding that who you want to become matters more than how you feel right now. Over time, discipline simplifies life. Decisions become clearer, priorities sharpen, and distractions lose their appeal. The more disciplined you are today, the fewer crises you face tomorrow because most problems are prevented before they ever form. Discipline is not about living a hard life forever. It is about doing the hard things now so that life does not become unbearably hard later when opportunities have passed and time can no longer be recovered. Laziness is not your enemy, tolerance is. Every point in this message comes back to one truth. Your life changes the moment you stop negotiating with comfort and start enforcing standards. When you raise your standards, comfort loses control. When you design systems instead of waiting for motivation, excuses disappear. When you shape your environment, action becomes automatic. When you move first, energy follows. And when you choose discipline today, you protect yourself from regret tomorrow. Nothing here requires talent, luck, or perfect timing. It only requires a decision to stop delaying the life you already know you're capable of living. You don't need to become someone new. You need to stop betraying who you already are. Your potential has not disappeared. It has been waiting for leadership. The moment you decide to act without permission from your feelings, to do the work even when it's uncomfortable, you reclaim control. Laziness only wins when it is allowed to. Take responsibility, take action, and take your future seriously because no one else will do it for you. Good luck on your journey. May you have the courage to choose discipline over comfort, action over excuses, and progress over fear. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your energy. Now go prove to yourself what you're truly capable of.